Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, another exciting show. I can't help but having great guests, and today is no exception to the rule. Check this out. I'm going to tell a little bit about this story because I find it very strange. Having a Fortune 500 career, employment, then all of a sudden deciding to walk away from six figures. Most people say, man, you crazy. I would never do that. But people have their own reasons for why they do what they do. To some, it may be crazy. To some people, they might say, hey, I would have done the same thing. Today, all the way from North Carolina, outside of Charlotte, an area closely to where Steph Curry went to college. I don't know the exact location, but she will share that with you. We have a young lady who started one of the best, let's call it what it is, best upcoming podcasts. The show is called Why Not Be Authentic. She's going to tell us how this podcast came about through her own eyes, not nobody else's, but her own eyes. I'd like to welcome all the way from North Carolina, the one, the only, I'm going to pronounce this last name correctly, Christina Izokovic. Woo, I got it right, didn't I?
You got it right.
Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You know, Fortune 500 career.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into the career and what led up to the podcast, tell the viewers a little bit about who Christina Izokovic. It's in my brain now, so it's going to be coming out like crazy. How it all started.
Yes.
Who is Christina Izokovic?
Of course. Yeah. So again, thank you for having me here. This all started, I'm actually a RN, registered nurse, and I started out in the medical field. God, I've done it for over 20 years now. But once I had two under two, I transitioned to oncology sales, medical sales. And my first year in sales, I was the #1 sales rep of the year. Second year, #2. Everyone told me I couldn't do it. And I was like, watch me. But my passion is helping and making a difference in this world. And I quickly did really well in my career, worked for a Fortune 500 company, was a regional trainer helping new hires with onboarding as well as launching of new products. But I also was a senior therapeutic specialist selling infusions for breast cancer. And I loved it. It was great. But I really have always had this dream of starting my own podcast and something that has really affected me and my life, my entire life. And that's how I decided. It was November of last year. I quit my Fortune 500 company. I told my husband, this is what I'm going to do. This is either really smart or it's really stupid, but I'm going to do it because I think if COVID taught us anything, more than ever, we need to reach for our dreams. And I think that you can achieve and accomplish and do whatever you have in your mind to do, as long as you have that confidence and don't give up and go for it.
What were some of the things that you was going through? Because you just don't quit a Fortune 500 job and occupation, and your husband must be very supportive to allow you to pursue your dreams. And you're right, COVID did give us all a chance to really, let's call it what it is, reevaluate. Because first of all, I think my experience with COVID, with the people that I came in contact with, was we wasn't used to being confined with each other, even our own partners. It became a
Right.
a paradox to where we was like, we can't even get along with the people that we're married to because we're so used to being following a matrix structure in life. And that had to make people go back and realize some things. But we also saw a high increase of depression with people. We saw
Mm-hmm.
suicide rates going up, that a lot of it wasn't documented because they didn't want to cause a fear roller coaster environment as well.
Right.
What were some of the things that you was undergoing? You mentioned COVID taught you something? What were you going in to make you quit the job and to get to where you at?
Yeah, honestly, I grew up with divorced parents since my parents were split up since I was 6. And my mom is an alcoholic, and so I have a lot of childhood trauma. I always said I could write a book or have a TV show. I mean, a lot of different things, and it just kept happening. And I really, honestly, I think numbed myself to the emotions throughout the years with alcohol, to be honest. And in sales, I was in a Fortune 500 company. It was just a rat race.
Mhm,
But after COVID happened, I just felt, for whatever reason, in my 30s, all the childhood trauma just came crashing, just came crashing. And the depression came, the anxiety came. I got diagnosed with ADHD. I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And I found, with all of that and going back into working, after COVID, the world opened up, going back into the job. And really, I've always been open and about sharing my story, because I think it helps me heal and it will help others. And
mhm.
what I found is, in corporate world, they don't like that.
Right.
Sometimes they talk about, this is, mental health matters and this is what we should do. But when you have a leadership role, when you know, they really don't like that.
I want you to
And
lead
I
by
felt like I
example.
wasn't,
They kinda want you to
yeah,
lead
yeah.
by
And I just
example, yeah.
lead by example. Like I tell my kids, be a leader, not a follower. And I just feel like I wasn't being true to myself. I wasn't being true to my family. And because of that, and because I had to hide the depression, it made it worse. So it got to a point where I could not get out of bed. I couldn't get up and make breakfast for my kids. I didn't want to go to work. I had to take short term disability. I made that decision on my own because I was very aware of what I was feeling and how it was affecting me. And I want to break the generational cycles, I guess, of trauma. And I wanted to get myself better and heal so that I could be the best version of myself for my children, but also to raise more awareness and help others that are going through the same struggles. So I took short term disability. I started therapy. I started seeing a psychiatrist, taking all those steps to prioritize my, mental health so that I can be my best self.
Were you
And
married,
when my short
Christina,
term,
at this time? Didn't mean to cut you off. Were you married at this time
no,
with your
was
husband?
married. Yeah.
Did he recognize the things that you was going through? How was he? Because usually when you have individuals that recognize, let's call it what is, what you're about to go through, and you recognize that it's going to take a lot of support and a lot of healing on your behalf, but you're married. I mean, what was his role and how did he
Mhm.
take this on as well as your children? Because you're trying to break, and I guess we use this word so much when we say generational curse, but it's really our own mental health that we're dealing with. How did your husband and your kids adapt to what you had to do to get better?
That is a great question. They were affected immensely. They really were. My kids were affected. Like, if mommy's not good in this household, no one in this household is good.
Right.
It's just the way it is. So they were affected immensely. It was starting to affect them at school. I mean, it was just, you could tell it was affecting them. My husband didn't know what to do. He's never dealt with any of the stuff I dealt with growing up. He's an only child. His parents have been together forever. But we've been together for 14 years now. So he's seen the roller coaster. He's seen the way my family is. So he knew what I've endured, but he didn't know how, like, we have a nice house, you have a nice job, we have healthy kids, we have, what every American wants, the white picket fence, all of it. How are you not happy? And I'm like, it's not that. It's that I have so much trauma that I've never really dealt with, that I can't get out of bed. And when he saw how bad it got, at first he was like, Christina, we can't do this. Like, we got this job, this house with both of our careers. And I'm like, honey, I got to, you know, I'll make it work, but I got to get myself better or I won't be able to contribute to this household at all,
Christina,
you know?
what was 3 of the traumas that really set you off? because let me use an experience. I remember a family member remembering a tragic moment in their life, and it triggered right after they came back from Desert Storm, and they relived everything, and it was kind of like wow. When was that breaking point for you? First question. And the second part of that question is, what were the three most impactful parts of your trauma?
Yeah. Um, I would say I'm going to answer number two first. The three things that were the most impactful for me. When I was in seventh grade, my mom tried to kill herself. Um, so she was an alcoholic. She had different boyfriends every weekend, and she's a good person. But when she drank, it was just a totally different person. And she, grew up without a dad, and there's a whole story there as well, right? We each do, I think, when we go through some type of mental health struggle. So she tried to kill herself when I was in seventh grade. Um, and I couldn't see her for a month. And I've always been really close to my mom, especially when I was younger. And that was a big pivotal moment for me. And as I got older and became a parent, it was almost like, I don't want to say resentment. It was like sadness, anger, resentment. Like, how could you not go get yourself better when you have these kids, these beautiful kids,
Right.
And it was a cycle. Even after that, she still went back to drinking. So that was one of the pivotal moments. The second one was my sister attempted, and I was in nursing school. My brother called me at midnight. They were right down. She was right down the road. I had to be at clinicals the next morning at like 5:30 in the morning for nursing school. And my brother said, our sister chased a bottle of pills with a bottle of alcohol. And so I went there and saw her on the ground. The ambulance was there. I rode with her in the ambulance and stayed with her the whole time. It was such a traumatic event, and that was me seeing it firsthand. My mom did it, then my sister. So I would say that's the second thing. And then the third, I honestly feel like the impact of the hatred, the animosity that my parents had for each other over the divorce, even though when it happened when I was 5, we could never be in a same room together. Like Grant and I, we did a destination wedding and said, if you want to come, you can come, to avoid drama, because it just became so toxic, their relationships together. I
Were
have
you
more
close?
things that happened to me as a woman or a girl in high school and being taken advantage of, and that's right up there with it. But I would say those are probably the top three,
Were you
and
close
it
to
just
your
came all
dad?
back.
Were you close to your dad, Christina?
No.
What do you think
Mm-mm.
was I know you were young at that time and they couldn't be in the same space. How would
Yeah.
how did you guys, and now you see your sister going through this stuff as an adult. How in the heck did you guys even
Mhm.
function in a household with your mom going to what she's going through, your dad not being able to get along? And I mean, how in the heck did you guys navigate to get to where you at now to even graduate high school?
Well, it's funny you asked that. So I'm one of four. So I have an older sister, an older brother, and me with my mom and dad. And then my dad and stepmom have a daughter that was born when I was in eighth grade. But I'm the only one that ever went to college and graduated from college. We all graduated from high school, but to be honest, it was really chaotic. I lived with my mom. I moved in with my mom in ninth grade. And then again, you're in high school and turn to alcohol to numb things. My brother did the same. And my sister did the same. So we got through it. We graduated high school. I worked since I was 16, well, really 12, babysitting, but since I was 16, I was involved in cheerleading and competition and gymnastics and swimming and stuff like that. Um, but I think that I want to say I was the least affected when I was younger, but as an adult, I feel like we're all pretty affected now, if that answers your question.
What was the trigger of all this? Like, where do you remember where you was at when the emotional breakdown took place and you realized that
Yeah,
you got to
100%.
get help?
Um, So my cousin, my mom's sister's son, so my cousin David, his name's David Mann. He's actually a well-known choreographer, was a well-known choreographer around the world. He's danced with Twitch, and he's danced with, he's been on different competing shows and things like that. He was a tap dancer. He passed away in 2022, in his 40s, and he is recovering addict and really got his life together. And that funeral and that death was really hard on me, even though I haven't talked to him in 10 years, because it just hit so close to home because we've all just been through so much turmoil. And so I reached out to my mom. At this point, my mom and I are estranged, haven't talked in years. And I called her, FaceTimed her crying. And I said, Mom, you can be in my life if you just stop drinking. I just need you to stop drinking. And so we started to have that relationship and bring it back and do better. But then we both started drinking more, my mom and I. And so in 2023, a year later, I had to I had to stop talking to my mom again, which was really hard for me because I just wanted that relationship. And I just couldn't get out of the depressed funk, of, again, these are your kids. Why can't you just make this decision to be in your kids and your grandkids' life? And it really did a number on me, to the point. And then I was hard on myself. I'm doing the same thing. I'm turning to alcohol. I'm not going to be a good mom. I'm going to put my kids through it. And just couldn't get out of bed. There was the breakdown. And with work, I also went for a promotion, and I didn't get it, which everything happens for a reason. And I'm glad I didn't. But that trickled on top of it. So it was just this recipe for disaster for me to have all these emotions that I've never dealt with, I've never healed through, I've never really felt and talked about. It just came just attacking me, and there was the breakdown.
When you decided to, this is what I usually ask people that go through that kind of situation. When you finally got the treatment and you went into the therapist session, what were some of the things that actually surfaced that you kind of knew in the back of your mind existed, but the therapy
Yeah.
sessions brought clarification? And what were some of those? And then what was the tools that you had to basically deal with every day? Because I'm not a therapist, don't get me wrong, but I get what you're
Yeah.
saying. To understand what your mom was going through, you became back to accepting her addictive behavior when she didn't have the coping mechanism to move forward in her,
Yeah.
to get off of this stuff, even though you thought that maybe she should. But now you go to
Yeah.
therapy. What were some of the things that surfaced, and what were some of the tools that you have to take in to better your life? Because a lot of people need to understand this is a journey. This isn't something that you just go into therapy and walk out and you're cured.
Yeah. You can't push a button and make it go away. It's a constant healing journey, and it's never going to stop, especially if you come from childhood trauma or you have a family history of it, right?
Mhm.
um but to answer your question, going to therapy, I am such a nerd. I love science and I love statistics and I love knowing. If I don't know something, I will go down a rabbit hole and study it till I know it. And so one thing is, I'm a huge advocate of therapy, but I feel like if you don't have the right person that specializes in what you've gone through, and the right personality, kind of like dating, right? You're not going to mesh well and it won't work. So one, I found the right therapist. I did a lot of research. Well, my husband actually did a lot of research. I couldn't even make the appointment. He was amazing. He made the appointment for me, and I went. So really, her really educating the things that I now, as an adult, am going through: the ADHD, the anxiety, the insomnia, and really understanding the why behind it. And it's not my fault, because you do, as a child growing up in that, you wonder, like, why was I not good enough to make it better? Why was I not good enough as her, as a kid, to make it so my parents at that time could just make it so that we lived a happy life? We're little.
Mhm.
So realizing that it's not my fault, and being okay with saying it's not my fault, but also being okay with saying, Christina, you've gone through a lot. And my therapist, I always thought, well, yeah, I've gone through a lot, but Sally went through this. That's worse. Or, like everyone has a different story. But what I learned is no matter what I've gone through, that impacted me.
Mhm.
My story, the trauma impacted me the way it did, no matter if it was similar to this person's or similar to that person. And so it was really like, okay, like my purpose in life are my is my family, my kids, my husband, but also this is something that a lot of people go through. So I knew with the counselor and having the right therapist and learning about why I'm feeling the way that I feel because of what I've gone through, and it's not my fault, it really helped me to, I would say, compliant with it. It was a long journey in the beginning. It was a rough journey, but it's still a journey. And because of how much I'm able to grow and now help other people that are going through things while on my healing journey and be an example for my kids, it's made it so that I continue on this healing journey and using the resources and the tools such as a therapist, going to see my psychiatrist, but also making sure that I prioritize time for me, which a lot of times we don't do that because we're in this rat race, right? And it's something that when you're not good mentally or physically, you got to step back and go, okay, I got to get me better. And so that's really been, I would say, how therapy has helped me and what I realized.
Mhm.
It's been a journey though.
What about your connection with your mom, your dad, and your sister? You saw this recidivism taking place
Hmm.
over and over and over again. You're RN by trade. You still have compassion. Your family, these are your family members. How have
Yeah.
how has your recovery impacted them, if it impacted them at all? And if it has, what have they done to learn from what you've done to heal yourself?
Yeah. Um, I think my parents feel really bad. You know, and I love both of them. My mom and I, we don't really talk much. If we do, it's through instant messenger on Facebook. Um, but my dad and I do, my stepmom, and I know my dad and stepmom feel really bad for the childhood
Mm.
that we went through. My sister, honestly, in the beginning, because I started live streaming on TikTok before I started my podcast, sharing my story
Mhm.
a year ago as Why Not Be Authentic. And then it grew so fast in a year because so many people struggle with childhood and mental health struggles and things like that. At first, it was hard for my siblings and my parents to hear that, but then it was like, now they're starting to go to therapy. My brother went to therapy for the first time
Really?
and he's in his 40s. Now, my sister, she never went to therapy. She doesn't like talking about things like that. And, her grandson passed away in April at 2 months old unexpectedly. And so she actually started having seizures about a month ago.
Right.
And they found out that it's called pseudo seizures or neurological functioning disorder.
Right.
So it's not like a chemical that in the brain that goes off to cause the seizures.
Mhm.
It's from trauma. So apparently, if you have so much trauma and it's not resolved and you don't heal, your body eventually says, "I'm done with fight and fright, the fight flight." And it attacks itself. And that's kind of what she's going through right now. So she's going to have to start seeing a therapist, which she's never wanted to do.
Isn't it crazy how the
And
universe sends signals to you whether you want them or not?
yeah, yeah,
What were some of the things
yeah.
that you share that caused the fight or flight with your family? And then another part of that question is you said you now talking to your dad. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would
Hmm.
be asking my dad, what was the disconnect between you and mom that you guys couldn't relate?
I have asked that question to my dad, but I think that they don't. Honestly, I think there's still so much, even though I'm 37 and I'm the baby of those two. that they don't want to share because they don't want to hurt us. But I know that with my dad, it- we've had this on and off relationship where we were close or not really close. We were in each other's lives or we weren't. And it's because I think of all the resentment that I had.
Yeah.
And I shared with them after I went through the really bad depression, like what was causing it. And I felt guilty for sharing it to them because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, even though it was from my childhood.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that my dad just felt, I think that we talk more now because of what I've gone through. And he was really nervous about me starting this platform and sharing my story, not really because of what he was worried about what other people would think, but just because you're in the public eye, you become in the public eye. But
Mhm.
I think it's been a learning curve for all of us, my siblings, my dad. And the coolest thing is, in my opinion, is we're all now starting to be on this healing journey, which none of us were before.
That's what it's about anyway, to be honest. It just
Yeah.
took it just took you the ability to open up and be authentic with
Yes.
with your
And that is why I chose Why Not Be Authentic, because I was tired of, there's been such a stigma associated with mental health struggles.
yeah.
And I know we're working on getting better with that, but I saw that in corporate world and I was like, you know what? No, like I'm going to share my story. I'm going to talk about it because this is who makes me who I am.
Mhm.
And that's going to help me heal. But in the process, which I didn't even know it would grow this fast, the platform grew to help other people.
Hmm.
And so that's how my podcast developed. Why Not Be Authentic? Is because I said, you know what? I'm going to share my story and I'm going to have people on my podcast from all walks of life: rich, poor, educated, not educated, American, not American, famous, not famous, whatever it may be, to show that mental health struggles does not discriminate. There's over 200 mental health diagnoses, out there.
Mhm.
And I think the more that we talk about it, the more we help reduce that stigma associated with it. So
Mhm.
people aren't ashamed to go get help. And so we can get better resources too. And that's really how my podcast developed, through everything I went through and then seeing how much it was helping me heal, but it was helping other people at the same time.
You know what? We're getting ready to wrap up another great story, and I appreciate you really taking the time to be authentic and share your story on this platform. Hopefully, it'll make a difference to the listeners because
Thank
all it
you.
takes is one person to listen and make a difference to them. How can the viewers reach out? Where's this podcast aired at? How can the viewers reach out to you?
Yes, of course. So Why Not Be Authentic is streaming now, first season on YouTube and Spotify. I am going to expand that platform so it's available on all the platforms as we have grown, and the first season has been super successful and the feedback has been
Congratulations.
amazing. And you can find me at Why Not Be Authentic on TikTok. You can find it on Instagram, and my link tree has all of my socials and social media platforms, as well as where you can find my podcast. I also created a website, www.whynotbeauthentic.com, where it shares some of my story and has the resources on there as well.
I'm gonna ask you a final question, two final questions before we leave. The first
Okay,
question, the first question, are you happy now?
that's a loaded question. I am happy now. It's been hard since my niece's son has passed. I told you briefly she moved in with us after her 2-month-old son passed. So that's a whole nother healing process, grief.
Mhm.
But yes, I am happier than I've ever been. But like you said, it's not a button you can push. It's a journey and it's going to be there forever. So I'm finally taking those steps to prioritize my mental health. And so, yeah, I am happy.
What keeps you in that beast mindset? You've been through so much. You definitely have a great supporting cast with your family, your husband.
Mhm.
You now have a relationship with your dad and your mom. What keeps you going?
Number one, God. Um, I don't want to ever push my beliefs on other people, but I'll always share my story. And the one consistent in my life, which was not a consistent for anyone else in my family, was going to church and God. And that was because my great great aunt raised me in church, and it's been a consistent. He has gotten me through everything. I wouldn't be where I am today without him. And then my number two would be my kids and my husband and this family in this house. They are my everything. And my goal is to make sure that they have the best childhood and best life so they can have the best future and not struggle, with childhood stuff.
That sounds like a winner. Thank you so much for the show. Make sure you guys subscribe, share, and like and support the new podcast, Why Not Be Authentic. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton show.